I have the round ways installed, which again are just gas pipe that I polished up. I got some 1-inch shafting through the main bearings there, and that's running nice and true. I threw a dial indicator on it just to make sure. We're running within about 1/1000th of an inch, so good enough until we machine it nice and round. And you can see the back end. I got some stick out. That'll be for a pulley, which I might have to make. I don't know if I can find a 1-inch pulley. I went with 1-inch shafting because I plan to use a hollow for this instead of solid, so I can pass stock through it, but I didn't have that right now, and I just found some 1-inch shafting, so that'll work for the time being. Here you can also see we got those plates installed. I couldn't use standard quarter 20 bolts, which I tapped. I drilled and tapped these to accept quarter 20, just because the head got too close to the casting, and I didn't want to use 3/4 inch plate because I couldn't find an easy offcut. So 1/2 inch, and then I just use socket cap, quarter 20 bolts that go through nicely, and then just tighten them up with an Allen key. So I'll finish putting all them inside, and then I'll snug up these bolts. Pretty much every one of them is set perfectly. I think the head on one of these didn't quite get a good casting around it so that the head can spin, but what I might do is just slot it, and then I can stop the nut from spinning, or stop the threaded rod from spinning and spin the nut to tighten it. But I mean, super overkill still. There's eight per bracket, so plenty of clamping force. So let's go ahead and get those tightened up. The next step, the hard step, is going to be squaring the ways to the bed. You can see here we have a multitude of adjustment before we get the bottoms on here. I can get them parallel lefty righty or forwardy backwardsy. Just getting them out of plane this way is going to be easy, so maybe use a piece of glass and marble or something. I'm trying to do this all low tech. I could just probably borrow a nice machinist level from somebody and get them level, get the base level, blah blah blah, but I want to see if I can do this with just minimal tools. So I think marble and a plate of glass might be the way. Anyways, I gotta think about that more. Onward. Here we have the round ways installed, and as you can see from the video, I have the supports in as well. It's 3/16 by 1.5" by 1.5" angle iron, and then this is 3/16 by 1.5" flat bar. So the angle iron is firmly bolted through the attachment bolts into the casting, and then on slotted holes, and then the flat bar has slotted holes that let me adjust the whole thing to tighten into the bottom of these rods, and that makes everything very, very, very rigid. Here you can see how we're going to go about casting the carriage. I'm going to use these as slides. It's not going to be steel on steel. I'm going to put pieces of brass in here, and the brass will then take up the riding force so we don't wear away the steel here. And these will be fixed together by a method which I will show you next. The plans, these old plans, called for welding rebar onto here that would extend into the concrete that I'm going to pour here. But I don't have a welder, and I think I have a way that I can do without. So yeah, we will go from there. You can see here, this is going to be where the drive rod will come through, and that'll move the whole carriage back and forth. So when we build up the mold here for this big concrete cast, we'll put a allowance to let that drive rod go through, so I can take this whole thing off without having to thread a rod through it. And we'll probably take it from there, because once this is built, and then once the cross slide is mounted on top, I can actually start using the lathe to help build its own parts. I was going to also cast the tail stock at the same time, but I might hold off on that because I don't think I need it for the way I'm going to build this, or not yet anyways. And that way I can true up everything with the actual lathe before I use it to cast the tail stock. Anyways, I'm rambling, so we'll move on. Hopefully in the next few videos I can get this moved outside, and I will have more space to shoot some video. Stay tuned. Here you can see we finally have the lathe in the garage. It took me an exorbitant amount of time and effort to get it up the stairs myself, but it was more of a challenge to myself than anything, so we did it. 500 pounds up a flight of stairs with a clever use of ropes and levers, and use a car jack at the very end. And anyways, it's up here in one piece and it didn't come tumbling down the stairs and destroy my house. I actually have it on the dolly that my old table saw came with. I kept that dolly and it's proven to be more useful than I had imagined. You can see here we have my old workbench. It was just a 2x4 framed workbench. I built the crap out of it because I had planned on putting heavy things on it, but you can see it was just framed, and then I tied it right into the studs of the house or the garage and put so I could drop it in the back and remove it if I ever had to. But so the back I'm not all that worried about. The front I was. There's only two 2x4s screwed together for legs. It's super solid, but I mean, this is a 500 pound lathe I'm putting on top of it, so I'm beefing everything up with 2x6s. You can see I just kind of replaced the front apron here piece with a 2x6, and then I'm just going to box in the legs with 2x6s, and I might put a couple beams running back to the framed out wall there. And that should be plenty. Time will tell, of course. And the next challenge is getting this beast on top of that. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do that yet, but we'll figure it out. As you can see, I figured out how to lift that lathe up, and we got it sitting comfortably on the bench. I didn't take any video of the lift because, well, it was a little bit of a sketchy setup. I was home alone and doing it myself, and I didn't want it to come toppling over and crush me as I went to reach for a camera. So you'll have to just believe me when I say it wasn't pretty. I lifted it up with, once again, more 2x4 levers and put some scrap wood under it to lift the lathe up high enough this way to get a floor jack under it. And then lifted it with a floor jack and put a bunch of jack stands under it, and then took the floor jack out and then shimmed up the floor jack with a bunch of bricks and repeated the process and repeated the process and repeated the process and repeated the process until I had it up as high as I needed to. And then I just spun it until the big tombstone head, which is like majority of the weight, till this was spun over the bench, and then I just lifted the other end because it's not all that heavy and turned it on, and everything worked out well, and I cleaned it all up now, and yeah, I'm happy. At no point in my crazy amounts of moving this thing have I dropped it or cracked the concrete or anything, so to be one as good as could be expected. You can see the bench, nothing too fancy. I went with the 2x6s all across. Hazel helped with nothing, but that's okay, she's a puppy. You can see underneath, I already had some braces. I had these horizontal, or in this way, the frontwards, backwards bracing there already in there, already on the bench. And I just put one across the bottom to help kind of act as a torsion box for the top. I don't know why, just it's not really doing anything, I don't think, but yeah, should be strong. The concrete itself is so rigid that most of the force is just going right through the front legs, and whatever load's getting transferred back there, it's just on, that's not good. It's just on screws and shears, so should be no big deal. So next up, we'll start casting the, probably the carriage, I guess, or the tailstock, one of the two, but stay tuned. Ooh, more pictures of the lathe not done. You can see this is the carriage with the angle iron and the brass shim stock. This is essentially, not shim stock, this is 60 thou brass sheeting that I just bent over on the vise. I bent this one too tight, so it's a paperweight. That one is about perfect, and it'll sit inside there, and I'll put a little tapped hole in here or something to hold it from moving around. You could probably use like JB Weld or some form of adhesive, but I'll put something a little more permanent in there. I'm going to cast the carriage up, because once I have the carriage cast, I can machine parts on this shafting here, and I'll be able to mount the 4-jaw chuck. And then once I get the 4-jaw chuck mounted, it's basically a functioning lathe, except doesn't have a tailstock. And then from that, I can hold a piece in the 4-jaw chuck and indicate it did nicely and cast a tailstock and yada yada yada. So anyways, carriage first. So here we are building it on my bench. Just building this one with a table saw. And nothing fancy. Super cheap plywood that actually my mill shipped in, and some MDF, and this is going to create a tunnel for the lead screw. There'll be another plate on top that'll hold inserts for mounting the cross slide. We'll drill some holes here, and that'll be used for mounting the anti-backlash nut, which I will also make, and that'll drive the carriage back and forth down the rails. And that should be all the casting once this is done, until I cast the tailstock, of course, but I'm gonna do that down the line. So onward and upward. Here's the completed concrete mold for the carriage. You can see in the background here that I have the big steel top plate, which I'm going to use for the cross slide. This is actually hardened steel, so that's going to be another story to drill through. Here we have the mock-up of the same width, and since I want to bolt down into it, I put these coupling nuts, and I'm going to embed that into the concrete, and I've cross-drilled them and put screws just to give them a little extra purchase on that concrete once everything's set up. Tolerances are all super tight in here. You can see everything just misses something else. So I'm gonna have to be real careful about packing the concrete in. So I kept it separate so I can pack this all, and then I can drop this in and wiggle it in after the fact to get a good seating on everything. I got all the little, you can't really see it from that angle, but more embedded bolts on both sides for the little anti-backlash nut things for the big 1/2-inch rod that'll come through here. And yeah, we're good to go. So I'll throw you on time lapse and we can see how this goes together.